You brought up strip clubs. It was
Right.
recently revealed you spent campaign donations at a strip club. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay. It's been sourced very well by the Daily Beast. Where'd they
It's
get this
not the
information?
Daily Beast. First of all, the Daily Beast is not a good source. That's number one. But number two, it wasn't well sourced even in that article at all. It was a reference to a campaign filing with
Yes.
the FEC that was not done properly.
Who didn't do the filing properly?
Whoever was in charge of the filing.
And who was that?
Well, there were a number of people I would assume who were in charge of getting that accounting done, but it wasn't
You
filed
don't know
properly.
who the people are doing your accounting?
Oh yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I know who they are. Do you want me to list the entire
Yeah.
list of people who worked on it?
Yeah.
Hi all, salutations. Welcome back to Themis and Thought. Grab your coffee, water, tea, whatever you're drinking, go and get that. Today we're going to be talking about Royce White, but before we do that, let's listen to Mr. McDonald's because this is how I got into the conversation about black men who are conservatives running for office. So let's hear what Mr. McDonald's had to say about Jim Crow and fatherhood.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
Wow.
But I'm gonna tell you this, growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself.
Wow.
And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say because it's my contemporaries as Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, "Now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids?" It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth.
So we heard that full clip, and I have my notes over here, so I will be looking over there a lot. Mr. McDonald's, in his statement here, says that his mother and father did not work out, and so he was raised by his mother, but he doesn't hold any ill will, it seems, to his dad. He does not know what happened or why his dad wasn't there. This is an interesting statement in that, well, you now have access to your father. You could ask him why, when his relationship with your mother did not work out, why he was not around to help raise you, because the relationship with the mother should not dictate whether or not he is a father. That is, his relationship to your mother should not be the determining factor in whether or not he is your father and shows up for you as a father should. So I think it is a cop-out and an unwillingness to engage in the hard work to figure out why your dad decided that he would not be a father after the relationship with your mother didn't work out. I think that is a cop-out. It is important that I note that grace and forgiveness is a beautiful thing, and that he now has a relationship and says he loves his dad is a beautiful thing to me. I can appreciate that for what it is, but I will willingly stay in ignorance in an effort to not have answers as to why my dad decided not to show up for me is absolutely wild. But that's a personality thing, because even if I'm going to forgive you, I need to know what I'm forgiving you for, and I need to know why it is that you didn't show up in my life. So let's move on from that. He then, Mr. McDonald's, goes on to talk about a revival in the black community. He's talking about the black middle class, and for some reason, instead of just talking about the black middle class and what having parents in the home does for a child, which I do agree, when you have parents who care about the child, they would de facto care about sort of what society is doing and what society will look like. What kind of society their child will inherit becomes a very important part of parenting. I think I agree with that fundamentally. But instead of just talking about that generally, he decides to reminisce about the black family during Jim Crow in a very, very odd, very, very odd way. And I don't know if this is reflective of sort of what GOP's black men who are in Republican Party have to engage. I'm not sure if this is how they have to engage, but it is wild to be a black man reminiscing about Jim. about Jim Crow, or anything in Jim Crow. Now, he's going to argue that what he was attempting to do was point out that during Jim Crow, that there were, in terms of numbers, more people together. But even that doesn't work, because people being together is not indicative of a good family. Were people happy? Were people able to provide for their family? Were people able to live well? Were they able to make decisions about where to live, where to work, and how to raise their children? Just saying that people were together, even if they were forced together by laws preventing them from living anywhere else, for example, doesn't do much in moving me towards your side of the aisle. But let's move on from that to him being specific about what it is that Black men were able to do during Jim Crow, which is good in his mind. So let's hear what he had to say about Black men during Jim Crow.
During Jim Crow, the Black family was together. During Jim Crow, more Black people were not just conservative, because Black people are always a bit conservative-minded, but more Black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are.
Okay, so now I'm going to go back. You said during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. What was the authority of the Black father in the Black family during Jim Crow?
Well, listen, under Jim Crow, obviously, Black people were under great persecution, unfortunately, by Southern Democrats and the Democrat Party overall in the history of our country. That's the fact. And so, well, let me finish now, Joy. And so having the Black man in the home was about first protecting the mom and protecting the kids. Incredibly important. It was the leadership in the home, which is incredibly valuable. And I think what we're witnessing, obviously, the last 30 years, definitely through my generation, is Black fathers being at home is incredibly important for the success of Black children going forward. And it's not just a Black thing, that's everybody.
So he says during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. The Black men were able to protect the mothers and children. Black men during Jim Crow were leaders of the home. So Joy then asks, what was the role of Black fathers during this time? And I'm trying to engage in this properly. So Joy tells a story of a young man who writes a letter to a white woman, and the white woman's family sees it. The white man shows up to the Black man's home, drags the boy from the home and the father from the home, brings them to a river, I believe it was, and unalive the boy in front of the father. This was an example of the lack of protection that Black men could provide during Jim Crow. And I don't blame individual Black men for their inability to protect anyone during Jim Crow. They couldn't protect themselves, so during that time, it would be odd for them to be able to protect anyone, including their own children and their wives and family, generally loved ones. When there is a system of white supremacy backing individual white people during Jim Crow, it is very difficult to make the claim that Black men were able to protect anyone. That is a wild claim to make. And he knows this, Joy knows this, everyone knows this. So the story Joy tells at this point is really indicative of the lack of power within the Black community for any kind of protection. Point blank, period. As much as we would like to rewrite history, unfortunately, Black men could never protect Black women in the US. We would have to be able to protect ourselves first. And during Jim Crow, where there were legal laws, there were legal separation, where power was granted to white people who wanted to enact violence on Black people, it is wild, again, to claim that we could protect and provide for anything. This is the reality, I think, that brings a lot of discomfort to myself and probably a lot of Black men. However, against a white supremacist system, especially during a divided America, the Black man's lack of any real power to protect himself means that he could not protect anyone else. Even for those Black men who would be earnest in their willingness to stand up against the system, we have, and did fail. It is that simple. When we think about lynching and the ability of the court to just dismiss it as sort of not an issue or blame Black people, we think about Emmett Till, for example. It is a wild statement to not recognize. It is a wild conclusion to draw, rather, to not recognize how powerless we were in the face of a system that wanted to oppress and further marginalize a group of people who have been marginalized. This interaction between Mr. Donalds and Miss Reed kind of propelled me down a rabbit hole of trying to understand at least one more prominent GOP figure that was a Black man and see how they engage when things are being brought up where they are seemingly wrong, how they face criticism and how they push back against criticism. So here comes Royce White. And while I probably should have found someone else, I'm sorry, we have to talk about Royce White. Again, Royce White is a GOP running for senator out of Minnesota, and he was a former athlete turned Trump supporter turned big-time politician that is engaged in some of the weirdest campaign finance issues that I've seen in a while. Now, we saw Trump being convicted, and whether or not Mr. White's campaign finance violation will result in him being convicted or fined in any way, I think that's left up to the FEC, but while that is being investigated currently, I do think we need to look at an interview from Mr. White and get into some foolishness with him. So let's go to David Patman, who a couple days ago did an interview with Mr. White about his campaign and some statements he made about women, because a lot of us have decided that the conversation about women only happens online. But when you see someone running for senator, right, and they're talking and they're having the same kind of rhetoric out of the manosphere, I don't think we can legitimately say that it's just a bunch of people online and it has no real world implication. So let's hear what the statement was, and let's hear how he pushed back, and then we'll get into his campaign finance violation. And then we'll conclude. So, Royce White, let's come to the front of the class and let's discuss. All right. So, Royce White decided that he was going to enter his Senate race with his flag. So, he said women are becoming too much. Royce White decided that he was going to enter his Senate race with a splash. Talking to Steve Bannon, he said and agreed with Bannon that, Bannon of all people, that women are becoming too mouthy. Let's play it. Let's play David Patman interviewing him about this.
Today, we welcome to the program Royce White. Royce is a Republican running for the U.S. Senate seat. Actually, Amy Klobuchar's seat, interestingly enough. Royce has been endorsed by Steve Bannon and Alex Jones in the Minnesota Republican Party. Also hosts the Please Call Me Crazy podcast, available on YouTube. Royce, if I understand correctly, in 2020, you wrote in Tulsi Gabbard, but you're behind Trump currently. Is that right?
That is correct.
So listen, you came to my attention in a clip I talked about the other day where you said one of the issues you find right now is that women have become, quote, too mouthy. Tell me about that. How did you come to believe that?
Well, first of all, I was being humorous.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, no, I was being pretty humorous. I'm kind of a sick puppy. I got a sort of unique humor. But
So you heard all of that, right? Not only is he this is so typical. He's a podcaster. He's like, I don't know why I'm laughing, but the fact that he's a what Jesse Wu said, take this mic away. He said women are too mouthy now. And now he's claiming to David Patman, when asked about the statement, that he was joking. Y'all want to hear the joke? Let's hear what he said and how he said it. And y'all tell me if this sounds like a joke to you. Because when someone says, quite frankly, and I am serious, and I mean it, I don't think they mean I mean it, ha ha ha, I'm joking. But let's hear what Royce White actually said so I don't put words in his mouth as he speaks to Steve Bannon. All right, Steve Bannon.
Continuing to say cultural issues as a code word for rube, white, rural, Christian, heterosexual, male, nationalist, that are just focused on their wives being too mouthy, sir.
Yeah. Well, look, let's just be frank. Women have become too mouthy. As the black men in the room, I'll say that. I don't know whether we're talking white men or Asian men or black men or so on and so forth. But no, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, there was the thing that is scary about it. And I say this, and people will go, "Oh,
hold it. Can I officially say that Joy Reid's Black Girl Magic does not work with Royce White? Can we just, I just want to make sure. Don't take it from me. I just want Royce to say it.
You know you're going to send me off. You go to Joy and Reid, and if she's wearing a white woman's wigs, you're going to piss me off this afternoon.
So he says, as the black man in the room. Please remember that, because he keeps saying as the black man in the room are like white liberals, and he plays very directly into identity politics, while he's going to argue that the left plays into identity politics in the interview with David. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, because it is wild that black Republicans are so focus on identity politics and playing it while accusing everyone else of playing identity politics. I think it is horrendous. But he says, let's be frank, women are, quote, too mouthy, as the black man in the room using his blackness again to cover up what he's saying, i.e. his identity becomes front and center and important to him as someone saying this. And then he goes, I will say that. And then he says, no, I mean, I am serious. Steve Bannon laughed when he said women are too mouthy. And then he corrects Steve Bannon by saying, no, I am serious. Yet, now that he's in front of David Pakman and being asked about being quote unquote women being too mouthy, he's saying he was joking, while when he said it, he was very clearly not joking by telling the person he was speaking to about women being too mouthy, essentially, don't laugh, I am not laughing, I am serious. However, somehow that was is the joke in the room with us? Y'all see the joke, because I don't see the joke. I do not see this joke that he was attempting to make. So he's lying. He is lying. He is definitely lying. But I think this is very important, because while you're joking about women being too mouthy, you have to recognize that Mr. White is the kind of man that says women are too mouthy, in that they tend to be more abusive than not. Now, this is an allegedly, but in 2013, his former girlfriend at the time, accused him of DV. Yes, let's pull it up. This is a TMZ report. NBA player at the time, Royce White, is at the center of criminal investigation in Texas after allegedly beating up his then girlfriend. White's ex-girlfriend filed a police report on August 30, 2013 to report an incident that went down at Royce Houston area back in June. According to law enforcement, records show someone called 911 on June 22, 2013 to report a laceration above Tanya's right eye. Cops say at the time, Tanya claimed she suffered the injury from an accidental fall. But Tanya changed her tune and filed an incident report. Cops tell TMZ the victim said she had lied earlier because the suspect played for the NBA and did not want the incident to change his career. Law enforcement also tells us the victim stated that White had assaulted her after she became angered by his advance towards her friend. Typical. Typical, right? Cops say the incident is under investigation, and so far no charges have been filed against the 22-year-old NBA player. So they ignored the shattered glass because the ex-girlfriend at the time also reported that White threw something at her, it missed her, hit the glass, and the glass is broken. Now, if you look at the screen, TMZ had a picture of the broken glass, a picture of the bruise on Tanya, the ex-girlfriend at the time, and I mean, she initially lied after the police were called. Not sure why they were calling the police if nothing happened. She lied about how she got the bruise on her, and then after, she wanted to tell what she claimed to be the truth about abuse from him. Now, it is important to note that he denied all of this. We'll get back to this at some other time, but you let me know who you believe, because a lady lied initially about how she have bruise and markings, and there is a shattered glass where someone threw something in the house, maybe at her, we don't know, and he's denying abusing her, and she's saying he did abuse her, but she was too afraid and thinking about his career when the police showed up, and thus she lied about how she got the bruise. We're going to move on from this, but I just needed to note that. All right, let's get back to the David Pakman interview.
You know, it is my opinion, but I think even more so a fact that the left has weaponized identity politics in our current political culture, and that the identities of women, the LGBTQ, blacks, and Jews are all sort of used in a similar fashion to manufacture consent, that being an American citizen isn't so much that important anymore.
So the left uses identity politics, completely ignoring that before he makes every statement, he highlights his own identity as a black man. He will later in this interview point out that David is a white man and use that as a weapon against David Pakman, saying that white liberals like David tend to do and operate a very specific way, again, highlighting that identity politics is very important to him and his understanding of the world. But for now, let's just move past that and continue the interview.
And so
Give me an
what
example of that. Give me an example of that.
Well,
so let's just pick one of those, for example.
Well, let's take all four, because they're all four fruit from the same poisonous tree.
Well, but just so that it's clear to the audience, let's just pick one as an example to show kind of your line of reasoning. How has female identity been weaponized in order to show that being an American citizen isn't important?
Well, number one, the feminist movement and the women's rights movement have been clumped into a more global citizen-based ideology that we are all one global citizenship, and the women's rights movement is at the helm of that, much by their own powerful organization, grassroots, not only here in the country but all around the world.
If that were the case, though, Royce, and I'm just trying to understand this, I want this to be a conversation.
But wait a second. But what I'm saying is, and let me be even more specific.
Yeah.
The prevailing consensus around the women's rights movement and the feminist movement are ideas such as believe all women. That was popular with the Me Too movement, and then you have an even more pervasive idea that in general, and it's said casually, but it's said with a lot of emphasis and potency, let's say, that men are not useful, and that women in their existence in this country politically right now today, but sort of all around the world, are nothing more than a byproduct of a tyrannical patriarchy. And by that definition, or by that thinking, that men are more so a hindrance on society and useless.
Who says that?
And,
Who says men aren't useful? Give me a name.
Well, I mean, one is Anna Navarro, self-described Republican centrist Anna Navarro.
Anna Navarro says that men aren't useful?
Anna Navarro sat right up there on The View with Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg and the rest of them, and she made a joke about men not being useful except for gay men because they're very good at gossip and accessorizing.
But
she said it right there on national
television. We started this
television.
interview with you saying, oh, what you said about women being mouthy is a joke. You're conceding what Anna Navarro said is a joke, and so you're one example.
Well, no, I don't think it's a joke.
Let me get the question.
I don't think it's a joke.
Hold on. You
no,
just
wait
said
a second.
It's a joke.
Let's be clear. No, I didn't. I said what I said was said in humor, but it had a lot of validity to it. I don't think what Anna Navarro said was a joke, even though it was said in a joking setting.
How do you know it wasn't a joke then?
No, I said I don't think it's a joke.
Okay.
Just like people would say they don't think what I said is a joke. I have the right to think that. My point is that there is a growing ideology that you can see by looking at social media, which is a good temperature gauge of what people think, obviously, because you're bringing up something I said that was posted on social media.
Well, I don't want to get bogged down in this necessarily, but it sounds, Royce, like you're one example.
No, it's not bogged down. It's important detail.
It sounds like you're one detail of the prevailing view of the feminist movement being men aren't useful is something Anna Navarro said jokingly. Is that right?
No. Anna Navarro, just like you're trying to represent my views, or let's not say you, let's say the mainstream media has tried to represent my view about women in general based on one soundbite from one podcast as a general sort of
yeah, but forget about that, Royce.
No, let's not forget about it. No, let's not forget about it. If you're going to keep interrupting me, then I'm going to keep interrupting you.
So David asked a really important question here. He asked, give me an example of how the feminist movement or something means that there isn't a care for America, or that we are prioritizing the individual in his mind and moving away from loving America because of the feminist movement. He says that feminist ideology recognizes global citizenship. Now, I don't know fully what he means here, but I'm reminded of Dr. Katrina's statement in one of our calls, where she articulates the importance of seeing people as humans and that we are in need in order to save the world and protect people regardless of race or sex or whatever. And I thought that was an important piece. I don't have a problem with the idea that we're global citizens and thus we need to take care of each other. Now, we can talk about national agenda versus sort of international agendas, but the fact that he thinks feminists sees people as global citizen and that's a bad thing, unless he's pointing out being a global citizen somehow contradicts being an American. I don't know what he's talking about, don't really care what he's talking about here. I just find it odd that he's so vehemently against feminism but cannot articulate what feminism is or why it is that he actually dislikes feminism. That is wild to me. That you hate something without knowing what it is, it's kind of wild. He then talks about believe all women as an ideology that was accepted. No one accepted this ideology. This was a call to recognize how we don't listen to women, how women's voices are muted or chilled, and thus their experiences get overlooked, particularly when it comes to engagement in the workforce, right? And so while I agree that we cannot believe all women, let me jump into this identity politics. As a black man in America, I'm never gonna just say believe all women. I am so sorry. But I think what the idea was, it's that when women come forward with a claim that we should treat it as legitimate and investigate it as such, as opposed to disregarding her and her experience and letting the domestic abuser and the people who are in power who have abused their power walk free without investigation. That is my understanding of it. However, I will give a slight caveat, which is a credit, that I also cringed at the idea of believe all women, right? The idea that you should believe women is so much more palatable and more to the point and useful than believe all women. And I did hear people say believe all women, but I don't think this was a legitimate stance. I think this was a pushback to the fact that women weren't being heard. And while we can go back and forth about the best rhetoric to use, we can hopefully agree to the fact that women's voices were muted. Now they wanted to be heard, and we had an obligation information to make sure that when they spoke up, they were being heard and the claims, again, were investigated properly. I feel like that is the basis for the Me Too movement and making sure that women are safe in the workplace. And that's what I got from it, but men have been crying and whining about the Me Too movement ever since it came into vogue. And I don't know why. It feels like a lot of men want to be abusive and abuse power and not be checked. That's what I think. But, and coming from Mr. White, who has been accused of DV, I mean, his position is going to be what his position is going to be. So we can move on.
No, just an example.
Well, give me another example. Who are the people saying that men are not useful?
Oh, well, they're not. Well, that just happened to be what Anna Navarro said specifically.
But you said that that's a narrative. Who says it?
The ideology is that men represent the remnant of a tyrannical patriarchy, and by default, the usefulness of men is in question at a societal-wide basis.
Okay. I don't want to use all our time on this, but it sounds like we're not going to get any more examples, and the audience can kind of judge that for themselves.
Yeah, you can pick anybody you want. The whole Me Too movement was based on the claim that we should believe all women. Do you think we should believe all women?
Well, that we've already talked about. It's a completely different question, and it has to do with what is the
No,
responsibility
it's
of
not.
police
No,
to
wait a
investigate
second.
if
Wait a
there's
second.
probable
Wait a
cause, and
second.
it has nothing whatever.
Wait a second.
Whatever
It's
to
not
do
a
with the
different question.
usefulness of being
It's
an
not a
American
different
citizen.
question at all. It certainly does, because there are fundamental rights of being an American citizen, one of which has always been the presumption of innocence. Number one. So there is complete merit to bring it into question when we talk about American citizenship.
Royce, you understand that when police investigate crimes, they investigate crimes, but that doesn't take away the presumption of innocence in a court of law. Like, this is basic legal stuff, Royce.
No. It takes away the presumption of innocence in the court of public opinion.
But this is crazy.
It takes away the presumption of innocence in the court of public opinion, which now in today's world can be just as dangerous as the opinion in the court of law. And even for
false rape claims are 0.02% of all sexual assault claims.
According to you. According
to crime reporting from police departments all over the country.
According to you
to the police departments.
According to you, then why don't they bring more claims?
Who?
Why don't more make it to the courtroom?
What claims?
Because they lack evidence. The reason why police departments say, first of all, again, you're trying to sidetrack me and you keep interrupting me. You brought me on your show.
You created the sidetrack.
You brought me on your show. You brought me on your show.
And we're not
asked me about a question about women. I'm answering a question about feminists in the feminist movement.
Hold on, Royce.
The point is when you assume that all women are telling the truth, or that we should believe all women on face value, by default,
I don't know anyone who has said that.
The whole movement of the whole Me Too movement was based on this idea that believe all women.
That's your assertion. I don't believe that to be true.
Oh, okay. Well, you let your viewers decide then. Let's go to the next question.
Trust but verify is the view that I've always had.
Believe all women was the commercial, widespread commercial.
So you heard that long segment. Apologies, I wanted to give you all the context so that people don't accuse me of removing context from the interview. Who are the people saying men aren't useful? Answer that. And it cannot just be, oh, Anna Navarro, one person on one show laughing about it. That can't be your claim, right? Now, I can help you here. The question is, are men useful? I don't think that's the correct way to frame the question. Rather, are men adapting to the new economy in this new world? Not only are they doing it, the question more fundamentally is, can they do it? And how can we make sure that men like myself, or men generally, are able to adapt to the new economy that is more informational, age, academic, rather than physical labor, right? And I don't think it's Anna Navarro you need to have this conversation with. I don't actually think it's women that you need to have this conversation with. I think you should go to the men's rights advocates who are arguing out here that men develop slowly, men need help, men can't keep up, men are slow. Here, let's go. Brookings, right? Let's hear what men are saying about men.
But not all boys and men are struggling in the same way. The intersection of gender with class and race really matters here. So boys from poorer households and middle-class households, much less likely to attend college than girls from the same background. But there's a much smaller gap at the top of the economic ladder. I think one of the reasons that elites can sometimes struggle to grasp what's going on with boys and men is that the gender gaps are just much less stark in affluent communities. And the gender gaps are even more stark for Black Americans. For every Black man getting a college degree, there are 2 Black women. So anybody who really cares about boys and men has to care about racial injustice and economic inequality. And anybody who really cares about racial injustice and economic inequality has to care about boys and men. Now, the fact that the education system doesn't seem to be working very well for lots of boys and men is obviously not intentional. There wasn't a feminist conspiracy 100 years ago to say, well, it might take a century, but eventually we'll overtake them, especially as it was men who mostly designed the school system. What's happened is that as the artificial and sexist barriers that were placed in front of women and girls have been successively removed, so their natural advantages in the classroom have been revealed. Compared to girls, boys face two big structural disadvantages in education. First, their brains simply develop later.
So you heard that. Men are struggling. In truth, men are online crying and whining about how slowly the male brain developed and how the system was better suited for women, even though the system was created to exclude women. Now that women can participate and are outdoing men in the system, everyone is whining and crying online about how men cannot keep up, men are falling behind, men need help, we need to create an affirmative action system so that men can get into school and get into work. Meanwhile, ignoring the fact that this system was created specifically to exclude women, and when women got access to the system, very recently, mind you, that now men need help and men need an affirmative action system where we're in this world, in this life, where men disproportionately disenfranchised in the United States. What do we need an affirmative action system to redress? What past harm to men have women perpetuated that now requires men to have an affirmative action system? So if people are talking about men being useful or useless, I don't think you go to women to have that conversation. I think you go to the men who are online whining and crying about how slowly male brain developed and how men can control themselves and how men are this and men are that and they are alphas and can't do this and they can't do that, they can't, there's no discipline, they have to. Go talk to them, people. I think go talk to them. Men isn't useful was a joke. Men being useful are not useful in the way that it was conceived. I will not play the view clip. It seemed like they were just laughing. I will say it was a bad joke. I don't like people making fun of people like that, but it's weird to go after someone making a joke in the way that you, Mr. White, was making a joke instead of going after the researchers from Brookings that are saying men are in need of help and they can't compete, they can't continue, they can't work, their brains develop too slowly, they're not going to school, they're not getting jobs, they're checking out of the system, they're depressed. I think you should go talk to those men. I think that's where your answer lies. Women are likely to report abuse. This is one of the things that came up in the conversation about women not wanting to go to the police for certain kinds of issues, partly because they don't think they will be believed. Another part would be them being humiliated publicly for the abuse they went through as opposed to holding to account the person who perpetuated the harm against them. It is wild while David Patman is using stats from the police department that Mr. White is just saying, oh, it's your opinion, it's an opinion. Sir, you are an opinion. Your statements are opinions now that aren't predicated on anything because you're just ignoring the research here that is being told to you. Not all women can be believed. Treat claims as legitimate and investigate as such. I think is a good way to summarize the Me Too movement and what it was pushing for in some ways. I don't know why this triggered Mr. White. Mr. White, I do not know why this got you triggered, other than the fact that it probably hit home for you when it comes to the accusations against you from your ex-girlfriend, which I thoroughly, truly, fundamentally believe. I don't know if it's true, let me be clear, but I fully believe you did it. I believe the archetype of a man who will say women are getting too mouthy is the same that would abuse a woman. There are different types, but that is one of them. I promise you that's what I believe, even though I don't know if it's true. All right, let's continue.
Let me ask about a couple of other
and
things.
I will say,
Yeah.
in that vein,
yeah,
when women are allowed to say things about men with no boundaries or no constraints whatsoever, and it's culturally accepted across American culture and across political culture, that is, in my opinion, more than a valid reason to be able to say, hey, women are getting out of control. And I do think radical feminists are getting out of control. I should have been more specific, but
I get the
thought I was
point
being
that
humorous.
you think women are out of control. I got it.
No. I said radical feminists are out of control. Be clear. And they are. That's why they're bringing their children to drag stripper shows.
Let me ask about a couple
of
things.
Do you think that's okay? Do you think it's okay to sexualize children at drag stripper shows?
I don't think the children are being sexualized if they go to a drag show. No, I just don't think that that's the sexualization
You don't
of
think
children.
that you don't think children are being? Would it be okay for me as a grown adult male to take underage kids to a regular strip club?
I don't think they're allowed. No.
In the interview, he says the belief all women claim is why he said that women are out of control. He didn't say women are out of control. What he said was women are too mouthy, right? But didn't he state in the beginning that this was a joke? He didn't actually believe it. So if you're saying you didn't believe it, but now you are saying, oh, that's why you said it because the Me Too movement and believe all women mean women are out of control, that means you weren't joking when you said it initially. Is it the fact that you were joking or you weren't joking? Because you opened up by saying you were joking, but when it suited your benefit, when you found a way to make it an argument that is not steeped in misogyny, which it still is, but in your mind you think, oh, here's an example of why it's not steeped in misogyny. I'm not talking about women generally, even though I said women, I was talking about radical feminists. Your argument seems to be evolving as you speak, and you are lying. You're lying about whether or not you're joking. You're lying about who you're applying this statement to. You're lying about how you're applying this statement, and I believe you're just a liar. Just generally. But it is funny that Mr. White would bring up strippers. It is funny because of the campaign finance rules that he is violating. He goes to, apparently, filed his his financial statements filed with the FEC apparently highlighted that he went to a strip club, spent over $1,000. I think it was $13,000. I will read it in a moment and put it on the screen. With campaign money. So apparently he was spending campaign money at a strip club. This is wild that you know that you're being investigated currently for spending campaign finances at a strip club, and then you, sui sponte, brings up stripping. This right here should be the intro. This right here should be the intro. Let's get into it, Mr. Patman. Get into it. Yep. Let's get into the interview.
As an
Can
example.
we continue the interview?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You brought up strip clubs. It was
Right.
recently revealed you spent campaign donations at a strip club. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay. It's been sourced very well by the Daily Beast. Where did they
It's
get
not
this
the
information?
Daily Beast. First of all, the Daily Beast is not a good source. That's number one. But number two, it wasn't well sourced even in that article at all. It was a reference to a campaign filing with the FEC that was not done properly.
Who didn't do the filing properly?
Whoever was in charge of the filing.
And who was that?
Well, there were a number of people I would assume who were in charge of getting that accounting done, but it wasn't.
You don't know who the people are doing your accounting?
Oh yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I know who they are. Do you want me to list the entire list of people who worked on it?
Yeah.
So you have time for me to go through a list of people who worked on the filing, but you don't have time to talk about the details of the political issues you want to discuss?
Well, how many people is it?
Give me a break. Who do you people think you're fooling?
I don't think we're fooling
Who
anybody.
do you people think you're fooling?
So I outlined this because this requires some technical language, I think. So did you spend campaign money at a strip club? I feel like this is a yes or no question. Mr. White, did you spend money at a strip club? If you say no, then my follow-up question would be, did your campaign spend money at, because I don't care. I just need to know why. What were you buying at a strip club? Fully nude, by the way, strip club. What were you spending? What were you buying? What were you paying for at a strip club? He says, his argument is, the Daily Beast is not a good source because they look to the FEC filing that was not done properly. So your critique is of the Daily Beast as opposed to your team who incorrectly filed something with the FEC about your finances and campaign finance violation potentially. And instead of arguing with your team and answering questions around your team, you decide at the Daily Beast, looking at the report that your team improperly, in your mind, filed with the FEC, that the Daily Beast is incorrect, not your own team that you are now claiming filed incorrect statements. And that is wild. That your filing said that you were spending money, you were spending campaign money at a strip club. Why are you mad at the Daily Beast? You should be mad at whoever, quote unquote, wrongfully filed that statement. Oh God, who did the filing? This was a great question from David, by the way. Who did the filing? Who filed what with who filed? He goes into a fit in some ways. And when people get this upset and just start blabbering about such and such and not really engaging fully, I know it's because they're caught. I know it's because they're caught. When you start hurling ad hominems out of nowhere instead of answering the question directly, you've been caught in a lie. And so he, instead of just saying, you know what, let me end this interview and go figure this out, decides that he's just going to drag and call David all kinds of names and argue or whatever. But let's look at the Daily Beast, and I'll put it over my face right now so like y'all can read through this slowly. But let's read what's happening. A new complaint targets outrageous campaign spending by Republican senatorial candidate Royce White, arguing that his old campaign's opaque reports and rampant splurges on a range of indulgences, including a $1,200 night at a Miami strip club, add up to a wholesale failure to follow the law and an attempt to cover it CLC also alleges that the campaign's reports habitually violated disclosure requirements, omitting the recipients of large wire transfers and check. So let me go back on and say this. They are writing out money to individuals or entities, and they're not telling or disclosing who these individuals or entities on the other end of receiving money from campaign money is being doled out to. That is wild. The complaint extends those reporting allegation to White's current Senate campaign, which to date has reported just one payment. Royce White appears to have brazenly violated the federal laws that foster transparency and accountability in our election by first using his 2022 campaign's account to pay for personal expenses, including clothing, fitness, and entertainment charges, along with siphoning off a six-figure sum through checks and wire transfers, and then wholly failing to report his 2024 Senate campaign's disbursement. Look, I don't think this is just going to be fines. This might actually lead to criminal charges if he's not careful. Like, let's move to the bottom and say the White campaign also reported unexplained disbursement to itself for more than $100,000 in checks, outgoing wire transfer, and cash withdrawal, which the complaint calls deeply concerning and says strongly indicate an effort to conceal the use of campaign funds to pay for personal expenses. Girl, while you are up there on the David Pakman show talking about how he's this or he's that, you probably should be figuring out how to answer questions around who you were paying upwards of $100,000 in total to, and why you were at a strip club using campaign finances to pay for whatever. I will say that it is wild to be paying $13,000 at a strip club and not be able to tell us what that was for. But let's jump back into the interview because here's a back and forth that's going to happen about the strip club that I need y'all. How are you going to be a candidate running for election and you're in a strip club using campaign money? Let's go.
I'm trying to understand it, Royce. The people who prepared the reports.
The answer is no. The answer to your question is no.
I haven't even asked the question yet.
You did. You asked, did I spend campaign finance money on strippers?
And you responded, and now I want to ask a follow-up.
Okay.
Your claim is there were filings which said you spent campaign funds at a strip club, but they were incorrect filings.
No, they didn't say that I spent the funds at a strip club. Or no, let's say they didn't say that I spent the funds on strippers.
But it was spent at a strip club.
Well, strip club they sell food at the strip club, don't they?
So you've spent the money on food at a strip club. Is that more accurate?
You seem to be very unfamiliar with strippers and strip clubs and drag strip shows, so I'll inform you, maybe
Please.
You aren't informed, that they do have food at strip clubs.
So what you're saying is the money was spent at a strip club.
No, wait, did you know that, though?
Club.
Did you know that?
I know strip clubs have restaurants.
Have you ever been to a strip club?
One time.
Did you like the food?
No.
You got to go to better strip clubs then.
Okay, but so what you're saying is you did spend the money at strip clubs, but on food. Is that right?
Well, I'm not saying that I spent the money. I'm saying that there was a filing on my FEC report that shouldn't have been there and potentially should have been reimbursed by somebody who may have been at the strip club, but that there is food at the strip club. So to say it was spent on strippers is not based on factual evidence.
I didn't say that.
Especially not from the Daily. You did.
I said strip club, not strippers.
No, well, okay. Well,
Which
that's
is the
what's
same thing you're
implied
saying,
by
right?
the Daily Beast.
It's the same thing you're saying, right? So we
But
agree.
that's what's been implied by the Daily Beast and other people as well.
Money was spent at a strip club by someone else in your campaign on
That's
food.
what's been implied by the Daily Beast and other mainstream media outlets as well.
And what's the truth?
I just told you.
Someone else bought food at a strip club with campaign funds.
No, I told you about the FEC filing. You seem to have a lot of time for this one.
Well, it's because you're so obviously lying.
Okay. I'm so obviously lying?
Yeah, just tell me the truth.
Sir, you spend money at a strip club, but not on strippers? No, like, I'm assuming, you are right. I'm assuming Mr. White is telling the truth, that he didn't spend $13,000 on strippers. He bought food at the strip club, because the amount seemed a bit low if you were all just throwing money. Like, I'm imagining them going and withdrawing money to... Do strippers take ATM and, like, Cash App and Venmo and, like, Zelle? I don't think so. So I'm assuming you would have to take money out. And if you take money out, will it show... Let me help y'all get to the bottom of this. Let me help y'all get to the... Did this man, Mr. White, show up to the strip club? Well, we can look at geolocation on the phone. We could do that. Y'all did that for the Capitol riot, right? So you can look where he was at this time. There are cameras if the footage aren't deleted, right? There are witnesses that you can interview. I think we can figure out if Mr. White, once and for all, was at a strip club doing stripper-type things with campaign money. Like, I feel like we can figure this out. then goes on, and we'll cut in here. He then goes on and says that David Pakman is a white liberal, and this is what white liberals do. This, by the way, is him engaging fully in identity politics. Like, he is fully immersed in identity politics. And I love the fact that David Pakman ate him up when he goes, aren't you against identity politics? Why are you using it against me? I was like, look, you better drag David, except this part where you said that you weren't white. I'm not sure. So, David, the person I'm looking at right now on the screen, he isn't white. This is a side note, because he was called white and he kind of pushed back against being white. So I didn't realize that David Pakman wasn't white. So David girl, period. Black, you better be a person of color. I can't. Wait, y'all really about to sit here and tell me David Pakman is a person of color? Period. It didn't help, mind you, that Mr. White out here talking about chicken wings at a strip club. So you spent like $1,300 on chicken wings at a strip club because you like the chicken wings at a strip club. Y'all, I'm gonna pause this. Let's just move to the conclusion, girl. I'm gonna just move to the conclusion. Absolutely. Anyway. So, after all of this scandal, you would think the GOP would want to separate themselves from Mr. White. And if you think that, you would be wrong. It seems the GOP is very, very much invested in supporting alleged criminals. I mean, at this point, Donald Trump has cast a dark cloud over, over the entirety of the Republican Party. I don't know why it is, but I'm not surprised after Donald Trump, Nixon, that the GOP would be supporting this. Here is what the cheer for the GOP had to say. So let's listen to what the cheer had to say and then come back and discuss.
If you say, well, let's get the Republican candidate for Senate out of central casting, you don't pick Royce White. That is true. He's an unusual candidate. There's no question about it.
Minnesota Republican Party Chair David Hand met with White for the first time here at GOP offices in Edina on Tuesday. They talked about the 2022 campaign financing.
As I've been told, some of those things were maybe not filed appropriately by whoever prepared his report for him. And as a candidate, you have to take responsibility for all of that.
How do you appropriately file an all-nude strip club in Miami?
I don't know the answer to that. I think he doesn't deny he was there, but he has a reason for it. And I think that has to be cleared up in his file. And I've asked him for that, and he said he would do that.
White's 2022 congressional campaign raised $390,000.
So you heard the cheer. The fact that the cheer is stating that Mr. White accepts that he was there, but he doesn't know where the money was spent or why, and it was a mistake, is wild, because I don't remember Mr. White at any point accepting at all for any kind of accountability and saying he was even there at the strip club, the fully nude strip club, using campaign money. I don't remember any of that. So let's go back to hear what Mr. White actually said.
Clubs have
you ever been to a strip club?
One time.
Did you like the food?
No.
You got to go to better strip clubs then.
Okay. But so what you're saying is you did spend the money at strip clubs, but on food. Is that right?
Well, I'm not saying that I spent the money. I'm saying that there was a filing on my FEC report that shouldn't have been there and potentially should have been reimbursed by somebody who may have been at the strip club, but that there is food at the strip club. So to say it was spent on strippers is not based on factual evidence.
I didn't say that.
Especially not from the Daily. You did.
I said strip club, not strippers.
No, well, okay. Well,
Which
that's
is the
what's
same thing you're
implied
saying,
by
right?
the Daily Beast.
It's the same thing you're saying, right? So we
But
agree.
that's what's been implied by the Daily
Money
Beast
was
and other
spent
people as well.
at a strip club by someone else in your campaign on
That's
food.
what's been implied by the Daily Beast and other mainstream media outlets as well.
And what's the truth?
I just told you.
Someone else bought food at a strip club with campaign funds.
No, I told you about the FEC filing. You seem to have a lot of time for this one.
Well, it's because you're so obviously lying.
Oh, okay.
In other words, after you've heard that, this man has not admitted to being at a strip club. He's not admitted to anything. He is actually trying to tell us that he doesn't know why that money was spent at the strip club. And in fact, it could be for food. But when pressed about, oh, so you all bought food at the strip club, he says, I don't know. I just want to let you know that there are other things at a strip club that one could be doing with money, including buying food and not spending it on quote unquote strippers. Like, this man did not accept that he was there. He does not tell us why he was there, if he was in fact there, or what the money was being spent on at the strip club. He just says that it's a mistake. You know what? I guess the GOP now have a man in the Senate if he wins to control, because there is no reason to be backing this man and not pretend like this man is literally not lying. That, like, you know what, I'm just going to end it here and say, this is an episode of the Black GOP foolishness, and we will catch you next time on Black GOP foolishness, because I don't know what to tell you. This is wild to me. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you again later. Mr. White, get yourself together, get a PR team, figure out what you need to say, create a narrative, and spin that, because this looks wild. Like, you are literally out here not saying anything at all. It is actually quite sad to see how you don't even know how to spin your own narrative, how to answer a question, how to not be combative. You are just running amok right now, and it's unfortunate to see, but we're watching, so see you later. Bye.